What's up and welcome to 17 Non. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different by recreating my favourite Vietnamese dish, chả cá. For this recipe, I simply wanted to have fun and recreate one of my favourite Vietnamese dishes. When recreating this dish, I wanted to keep as close to the original as possible, to the textures, to the flavour profiles of dill and turmeric, which is classic when making chả cá. And I thought it would be cool to upload this video and show you guys my thought process when trying to create a dish. With all that said, I had a lot of fun making this video, and let's get straight into this recipe. Welcome everyone, let's get straight into this. First thing we need to do is to prepare some monkfish. And what I got here is a tail that is pretty firm and works perfectly for chả cá. This has to be one of the easiest fish to prepare. All we need to do is to remove this central spine bone. Use a sharp knife to make long scores going down one side of the bone. Try and keep the knife as close to the bone as possible, as we don't want to waste any of the flesh. When sliced, remove the fillet and repeat this for the other side. This is the only bone the monkfish has, so we don't have to worry about any others within the fillet. Next, try and remove any excess sinew if possible, as this can tend to be a little bit tough. When ready, place the fillets onto a tray and we can move on to preparing the marinade. For the marinade, I want to keep things nice and traditional by using turmeric and yogurt. First, we need to slice one shallot as fine as possible. Next, grate 1 teaspoon's worth of galangal, or you could use ginger. Now, in a small bowl, add 3 or 4 tablespoons of yogurt. And to the yogurt, add the minced galangal and shallot. Add 2 tablespoons of fish sauce for a salty element and 1 tablespoon of turmeric. Give this a really good mix, then we have our marinade. Nice and simple, and it's this marinade that makes chả cá. When ready, we now want to lightly brush the monkfish with the marinade. Try not to add too much, as we're only after a light marinade, and a little of this goes a long way. Flip over the fish, then brush on both sides. Now it's time to make this thing look a bit more attractive. Roll out a large sheet of cling film, then add the monkfish. And the next step is to roll this thing up into a tight cylinder. You don't have to do this, but this will give the monkfish a nice firm shape. Now rolled, twist the edges to tighten up the monkfish. When ready, repeat this process for the other fillet and store these onto a tray. Place the monkfish into the fridge and we'll cook these later. The next element I wanted to add to this dish is an intense dill oil. Dill is very relevant in chả cá, and that is the inspiration for this. To a pan of boiling water, add 30 grams of spring onion, 20 grams of chives and 100 grams of dill. And from here we want to blanch the herbs for around 60 seconds. And this step will help give us a nice dark green oil. When ready, remove the herbs and add to a bowl of ice cold water. This will shock the herbs and also help to stop the cooking process. Next, when chilled, drain the herbs from the water, then add to a food processor. Make sure the herbs are well drained, as we don't want any water in this oil. Add a pinch of salt and 100 ml of neutral cooking oil. Now we want to pulse the herbs on high for around 5 minutes. Shortly after, the herbs should be nicely broken down, leaving us with a fragrant oil. And all we need to do with this now is to separate the herbs from the oil. Pass through a fine sieve lined with kitchen paper. And we want to let this slowly drip away in the fridge for a few hours. This can be done way in advance or even the night before, and what you should be left with is a nice dark green oil. Keep this to one side, and we're going to use this to split another sauce later. This next part is going to be slightly tricky, but will represent the noodle element of chả cá. And what we're going to do here is transform Banh Cuon into noodles. In a large mixing bowl, add 75 grams of rice flour, 65 grams of tapioca starch, 500 ml of warm water and half a tablespoon of neutral cooking oil. Whisk the batter until nice and smooth. Then when ready, you want to cover the batter and allow it to rest for at least half an hour. 30 minutes later, take out the batter and give it one more final whisk. And it's time to turn this into some rather unique noodles. Place a pan onto a medium heat and lightly coat with oil. When hot, add 1 decent label of the Banh Cuon mix. Swirl the pan to evenly distribute the batter, then place a lid over the top. These wrappers are slightly thicker than usual, so we want to steam these for around 2 minutes. When ready, the batter should have slightly released itself from the pan, just like a pancake. When ready, remove from the heat and empty out the wrapper onto a cutting board that's lightly greased with oil. Allow to cool, then cut the wrapper into small discs. This is a little tricky to do as the wrappers are quite sticky, but we should be left with something quite unique and delicious. Repeat this process for the rest of the batter and we should be left with quite a few discs. Keep these lightly coated in oil and we can move on to the next element. This next part is to add some richness and body to this dish. To a small saucepan we want to add 400 grams of coconut milk, 100 grams of coconut cream, 2 sliced bird's eye chilies, 2 roughly chopped shallots, 5 grams of sliced ginger, 1 roughly chopped lemongrass, and 5 ripped kafir lime leaves. Now take this mix of wonderful flavors and place onto a medium to high heat. And from here we want to reduce the coconut milk by half. This will also help infuse as well, but take care when doing this as it can burn. When reduced, season with some fish sauce and a squeeze of fresh lime juice. And when happy with the flavor and consistency, we can now go ahead and remove all of those aromatics. And we should be left with an intense coconut reduction, and we will add the dill oil to this later. Keep this to one side and it's time to start to bring everything together. By this point the monkfish should now be nice and firm. Remove the ends and slice up the monkfish into much more manageable sized pieces. And as this is chopped relatively small, this shouldn't take long to cook at all. Next we can place a heavy pan onto a high heat, then add a touch of cooking oil. Then when hot we can add 1 portion of the monkfish. This should take around 2 to 3 minutes to cook in total, but one key part of chakka is to get a nice caramelization over the fish. Rotate the fish every 30 seconds or so and continue to fry on a high heat. And after 2 to 3 minutes of cooking, our monkfish should now be ready. Remove from the heat and allow to rest to one side. And going back to the coconut reduction, add some of the dill oil to split the sauce. Give the oil a quick swirl, then this split sauce is now ready to go. Keep this sauce warm to one side, and the final component we're going to use are some chili roasted peanuts. To make these, simply dry roast the peanuts, then add sweet chili sauce and a mild chili powder. And now it's time to finally bring this whole dish together. First we can line the plate with those unique Banh Cuon wrappers. These are still pretty sticky, but they're going to taste pretty damn good. Next we can coat the wrappers in that split coconut reduction. The textures and flavour of the wrappers and the sauce is going to give a real good mouthfeel. Now we can add some of the monkfish, and I think 3 pieces of the fish should be good. Next, for a little bit of texture and heat, add some of the chili roasted peanuts. Then add a generous amount of fresh dill. And finally, finish with some more of that dill oil. And that's all there is to it. We now have a recreation of chakka. This dish had a good mix of flavors and textures. And I was super stoked how this version of chakka ended up. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed this slightly unique version of chakka. And if you have any ideas on what you could add to this dish, then I'd love to hear about it in the comment section. And until the next episode, have fun, take care, and peace as always.